Alright, hello and welcome back to Welcome to Scratch Programming. This is Jeff Scott, Information Technology Instructor at Rankin Technical College, Wentzville. We're about to build our first program. Now, when I teach a programming class, we sit there and we have basically a blank canvas, and with that blank canvas, we start adding programming statements. Our statements that we have to add basically are right over here. So it's a little bit different. This is known as a block structured language, where we take blocks and we drag them out into our scripts areas here to do what we want to have done. Okay? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start up a new project. So I'm going to click File, New, and it says that it's Untitled 8. Well, I don't like that. And I'm going to call this Rainbow Art. I don't know, I can call it anything I want, but Rainbow Art seems like it'll be fine. So that's what I've given it for a name in there. Now I'm going to say File, Save Now. And what I should notice now is in my stuff, I now have Rainbow Art. Okay, it looks a lot like these other ones. In fact, a lot of this stuff that's in here I really don't need anymore, but I'll get rid of it later. All right, I want to keep that guessing game, so I've got a copy of that, and here's my Rainbow Art, or I call it color bounce. All right. If I didn't want this anymore, I could just click delete right now, and it would move it into trash. When you're in the trash, there's a way to literally just tell it to restore it too. But just so you see that. All right. So okay, so here's my project. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right mouse click on the cat sprite, and I'm going to, on the sprite here, I'm sorry, and I'm going to choose delete, because I don't need the cat. I'm not going to use it for what I'm about to do right now. All right, now what am I going to do here? Does it really matter? Okay, well, first thing to realize is, you see, we got a blank screen. Not technically. Okay, if I go over to here, all right, what I want to do is right in the middle there, right there, I want to come in and I want to change my color first of all. I want to make this red. Let's make it real red. That looks good. That looks pretty good. Okay, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to put in a real little circle right here. Okay, and actually I did it with a black circle with a red inside, and I don't want that. I just made that my fill color. So let me get rid of that. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Well, I wanted my outline to be the same color, so I wanted that to be red as well. Okay, so basically that's what I wanted in here, was a red circle. That's what I wanted. I didn't want this. And say I got some junk in here. We'll see if I'm able to get rid of it in just a minute. So, okay. All right. Let's see. Well, this is going to look funky on the screen, and I should know how to remove this, but for some reason it's not allowing me to. So, I think it's because I made it a backdrop, and I think that's what goofed it up. Alright. You'll notice up here, should have an undo command. There we go. Okay, so that's all gone. Alright. let's go back to our code here. And I guess we will go, I don't want to go to backdrops though. What I want is I want to do sprite. So choose a sprite. Choose a sprite, paint. That's what I want. There we go. Pretty much was the same thing I'd just done. Looks like that's as red as it can be right there. So, well, I've got now 2 dots, which I didn't want. Let's try that again. Okay, so there's my dot. I've made a new sprite. Good, that's what I wanted to do. Now, if I click over here, I could make a copy of it, but I don't want to do that. I could click on here and remove it. But what I want to do is I want to change the name of it. I'm going to call this .1. Okay? Later I'm going to make copies of this, so we won't worry about it. All right? It's a little bigger than I wanted it to be, but it's fine. I'm just going to try to take it. It's pretty close to the middle right there. Now, a couple things. It's got my X and my Y coordinates. We talked a little bit about these before. So if I come in here and try to change that to 0, and I try to change that to 0, that actually now should be right in the middle. Okay, not that that's a big thing, but just so you see that. All right, we're going to look in here at size. We're going to look in here at direction. Notice I can show it, I can hide it, I can bring it back, etc. And I've changed the name. All right, so we went in and we added our new little red circle right near the middle of the screen. All right, and we changed the name of it. We did a couple of other things. Okay, so I want to come back to here and I want to start putting in some code that's going to react with this. And the first thing that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to go in under my events. And again, this is the one you use most often when clicked. Now, a couple things about this. I'm going to see if I can, there we go, give myself a little more room on here. All right. You'll notice that a lot of the things that we're going to be using in here have different kinds of shapes. And you'll notice this one right here has, at the top, it's rounded, which means it can't hook up to anything, but other things can hook up to it. For instance, notice I'm not going to keep this here, but if I went there, boom. All right, and now this has got a thing on here. And you'll notice when you look here, this has got a notch, but it doesn't have a bump on the top. All right, so it's basically meant to be added to here. All right, so what we're saying in there is we're adding a when clicked event. All right, now I'm going to move over to the motion category. Now I can either go up like this, or I can just click here. All right, and I want a move 10 steps. You've seen this already. If I run this now, what you'll notice is this is going to move a little bit. Not much, but you'll notice it. All right, so if I click here, if I click run, it moved. How do I know that? Because now it's at 10, 0 instead of being at 0, 0. Remember that coordinate system that we talked about before. All right, and there it's back again. Okay? And when we want to run, you can either click on the green flag right here, or you can literally click on here. They'll both run it. All right? All right. The next thing I'm going to want to do is basically I want to set this thing up. I want to set this thing up so that it runs continuously. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to control right here, and I'm going to find myself a forever block, which is right here. And you'll notice again, it has the notch in it. Notice once we get the little shadow like that, it means it'll automatically click in. And this is meant to have stuff put inside of here. All right. So let's go back and grab another one of these move 10 steps. Now there's different ways we can do this. I can right mouse click on here and choose duplicate. That duplicates everything. I don't want another forever block, so I just drag that over and I can bring that in here. The other thing I can do is I can take out a whole bunch of them at one time if I want to, and then move them in. Or if I want to, just when I need one, I just take it and grab it and put it in. People end up, becoming more comfortable as they work with this, and they do it their own way. Now, what I'm saying in here is forever move 10 steps. The problem is eventually it's going to hit the side. But watch what happens now when I run it. And you see that. Well, we've started to get some movement. And we're at 247.0. So it has moved. All right, I'm going to stop the run and I'm going to set it back again to 0. All right, so that's good. Okay. The problem is, as you just saw, was it hit the edge and it just stopped. Well, let's see if we've got anything else here that might handle that. Oh, let's see. How about this? If on edge, bounce. So we're putting another thing inside of this forever block. Let's see what it does now. Let's watch it here. Okay, well that's something. Again, we've got movement. And ideally here, what you are starting to see is not just that we have movement, but different things are happening. So this is telling it to move. This moves at 10 steps to start with, but it's telling it to move at 10 steps, 10 steps, 10 steps, 10 steps. Eventually hits the side. So it says bounce, which sends it back the other way. And it keeps going 10 steps, 10 steps, 10 steps until it hits that corner and it bounces again. Sort of like the old Pong game, if you ever saw that. Okay? Now, I mentioned this to you before, all right? But I do want you to see this, and that is, we looked at this a little bit earlier. This is how stuff moves in here. Okay? So in other words, look at it like a clock. 3 o'clock would be 90 degrees. 6 o'clock would be 180 degrees. 9 o'clock p.m. would be negative 90 degrees. And midnight would be 0. So we can move this stuff any way we want. What we're going to do in just a couple minutes, as it says here, is we're going to pick a random number between negative 180 and positive 180 and have it move in that direction. All right? And that's the idea. Now, before we do that, we're going to go to motion, and before our forever block, so before this, I'm going to put it here, is I'm going to point in direction 90 degrees. Now, I didn't have to move that block down, but sometimes when you've got things like this, it's kind of hard to wedge something in there. Sometimes it comes up just fine. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to do that. Let's see what that did. And you say nothing. You'll have to take my word for it. It did something. Now, the problem is, okay, we did a point in direction before the block. All right? Now, that's all fine, but we don't want it to go 90 degrees. We want it to go in a random number between negative 180 and 180. We just told it to do what it was doing. So we want to take what's in there. Notice 90 degrees. We want to take that. We want to replace that. So we're going to go down to our green operators, which are down toward the bottom. And we're going to pick a random number. Now we could leave 1 to 10 in here, but that wouldn't do what we wanted it to do. What we want in here is a number between negative 180 and positive 180 for the same thing that I just showed you on there. All right, watch how it changes now, if you would. All right, now it's going in different directions. It basically, we have no control over it because indeed it is going randomly. And that is exactly what we want to have happen. All right, so that's good. And again, I don't have to keep putting this back to 0, but I just do it anyway. So, all right. Now, we put in a little bit of code. We haven't put in a ton of code, but we put in a little bit. And it might be time for us to come in here and do a file save now. Again, this is a very, as far as I can tell, a very responsive product, and it doesn't tend to go down often. However, your internet could go down. Anything could happen. As I'm giving this lecture right now at my house, it's raining outside. It's not raining outside hard, but it was before. All right, so different things can happen. It's never a bad idea to go in and do a file save. So we started a new project. We immediately saved it. All right, and I just called it Rainbow Art. We right mouse clicked on the cat sprite down here, and we chose delete because we didn't need it. We created a new sprite, okay, from down here. We used the paintbrush and just made a very simple red dot that we ended up putting pretty much on the middle of the screen. Then we went into here and we looked at the stuff that's in here. All right, that is, we changed the number, or the name rather, and we looked a little bit and we talked some more about the X and the Y coordinates. Then we came in and started putting in our code. We started with a when clicked event, all right, which is very often how you're going to start your programs. Then we went over to motion. We moved it 10 steps, and you saw what happened when all we did was move it 10 steps. All right, that it literally just moved a little bit to the right. All right. Then what we told it is we wanted it to point into a random direction. All righty. Well, we didn't actually do that next. Next, we put in the forever block. We told it to move 10 steps. And we told it, once it reached the edge, to bounce. So when we did that, we had, again, almost like a Pong game when it was going back and forth. But then what we did was we told it we wanted it to do this stuff, but we wanted it to go into a different direction. You also noticed in here when we came in, you saw how we could bring in one of our operators. We use that operator to replace the number 90 that was in there. Notice that when you do this, once it lights up like this, it means it's ready to grab it and put it in there. We changed the numbers that were in there, which were 1 and 10, to negative 180 and positive 180 to reflect this right here. All right, the next thing I want to do is I want to come over here and I want to right mouse click on my dot 1 and I want to duplicate it. In fact, I want to duplicate it twice. So now I've got a dot 1, I've got a dot 2, and I've got a dot 3. Okay? And all of them have the same code. Okay? They all have the same code. How do I know that? Well, here's dot 1. Here's dot 2. And there's dot 3. And notice the code is the same for each one of these. Okay, we've also got them. How do you know which one's which? Well, since they're all the same color, it's very hard to tell. But notice I'm going to click on dot 1 and watch how one of these will very quickly turn blue. You may or may not have noticed it. There was dot 1. There's dot 2, which should mean, lo and behold, there's dot 3. So I'll just put them up like this, okay? So I can see what's what. Now I'm going to copy this one more time, but you're going to see that I'm going to make some changes. So I'm going to copy dot 1 one more time and duplicate. Oops. Duplicate. And notice it calls it dot 4. I don't like that name. I don't want that. I'm going to call this is going to be my drawing dot. And what this actually is doing in here, and that's right here. Let's bring that one. We'll bring it over here so it's not with the rest of them. All right. What that one is going to end up doing is it's going to end up using something called the pen control, which we can't see over here, but we're going to bring in a minute to actually do some drawing on here. You're going to see exactly what that is and how that's done in just a minute. Okay, so I've changed the name to drawing dot. Good. So with my drawing dot, I don't need any of this code. So I'm just going to take it, whoops, take it all and drag it all over here. Boom, it's gone. Now you'll notice my 1, 2, 3 are still here, but my drawing dot now has no code. That's exactly what I want. All right. So I want to basically use what's called the pen tool. The pen tool used to be in here, but it wasn't used that much, so it's been removed, but I can add it back. If I come down here in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen, you may or may not be able to see this, but it says Add Extension. I'm going to click that, and I want to choose the pen. And boom, now the pen is there. Okay. All right. So I'm going to add some code here. First thing I want to do is I want to go over to my events, and as before, I want to do a when clicked. All right, so when clicked, I want to come down to my pen now. I want to do a pen clear. Maybe they change it to erase all. Now let's try that. Okay. Then we're going to change the size of the pen. We could change the color, we can change the size. For now, I just want to worry about the size. I want to make it be a little thicker line. Okay. One thing hopefully you've noticed in here is I like to write a little code and then test it. Write a little more code and then test it. All right. I shouldn't be writing all of my code at once. That's a silly thing to do. Now I'm going to put in a forever lock. Oops. Right there. And in here, okay, I'm going to tell the pen, for lack of better words, where to draw. So I'm going to tell it to go, and you'll notice what's in here. I'm going to tell it to go to dot 1. And then I'm going to tell it to take the pen and put itself down. Then I'm going to tell it to go to dot 2. And I'm going to right mouse click on here and choose duplicate. And now I'll tell it to go to dot 3. And now I'm ready to take my pen and do a pen up. Finally, I want to come in and I want to change my pen color by 10. Now that's a lot of code. When you look at this, like, what the heck is going on there? Well, that's pretty much going to be what it's going to look like when it runs. There we go. We're almost done. Believe it or not, we're almost finished. Problem is, pretty soon, the screen's going to be filled up, and it's going to look, for lack of better words, pretty junky. All right? So what I'd like to do is I'd like to add some code in here that tells it every 10 seconds I want this to redraw itself. All right? And I don't want it to run in here. I want it to run as its own execution. So I'm going to go back to events again. I'm going to put another when clicked right there. I'm going to put a forever block in here. All right. I'm going to tell it that I want it to wait for 10 seconds. Oops, sorry. I always forget where wait is. Oh, this is embarrassing. I want to tell it to wait for 10 seconds and then do a pen clear or erase all. So we'll put the erase all in. There's a wait until. We want to wait for. There we go. So we want it to wait for 10 seconds, and then we want it to redraw itself. All right, let's try it one more time. So starting to draw. And you see after 10 seconds, okay, what it's doing here is it's drawing, if you look real close, it's drawing a bunch of V's. And it's changing the color and it's changing the direction as it goes through. All right, one more thing we're going to do, and then we're going to put this program to rest. So I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to come in and over here, way in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a thing there that says choose a backdrop. I'm going to click on that. And we could choose anything here we wanted to choose. I kind of liked it. I ran this before with the Galaxy. So I'm going to put that in. And what you'll notice, let's make it big to start with. And let's run it. See what you get? You get the Galaxy background. Now, I'm looking at this, and my pen at 8, to me, seems a little bit too wide. Okay, so I'm going to stop the run. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to change the pen size. Let's try changing. Let's cut it in half. Let's change it to 4. See if it looks nicer that way. Wow, that still is really, really wide. How about 2? Changing colors, so that should be here. And it still looks the same. But again, you can play around with this. You can do whatever you'd like to do with this. And I would strongly encourage you to, because like anything else, that's how you learn. Okay? Is just taking a look in here. The very last thing I want to tell you is when you run this, okay, if you hold down on the Shift key and you run it, so I'm holding down on the Shift key and I'm going to click this. In fact, let me show it to you over here. I'm going to stop the run. I'm going to start it again, but I'm holding down on Shift. This is going to put it into turbo mode. See that? See the difference? Now, if you were playing a game where you wanted a character to be able to move unbelievably fast on the screen, you might like turbo mode. Personally, with me, it's driving me nuts. All right, so all I do is hold out on shift again and click on it one more time. And it goes back. All right, so that's it for our first program. So we now have done our rainbow art program. Okay, stop the run right here. And when we come back, we're going to start on a second program, and that program is going to be a guessing game program. So I'll be back with that shortly.